an academic or you're a regular guy. We have to be fearless.
FrontlineTV.com.
Dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, follow Joe and I, if you would, on social media at the Frontline TV on YouTube, and the FrontlineTV.com if you want to support us in any way. And we know that you always have, and you help us with your prayers, which is the most important thing. And remember, download, or we're on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, where you can download their app. You can hear Joe and my interviews that we have on there. And also the Crusade channel, chat room, crusadechannel.com/chat, crusadechannel.com/chat. That is the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. So, Joe, having covered all the promos, okay, in the last few weeks, Joe, I joined the prayer group recently, all right? And one of the men that I met, he invited me to a online group where, Catholic men go and they throw around ideas. And one thing is this. I see it's inevitable, Joe, when you get strong Catholic men, we have to talk about politics. Whether you want to or not, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody out there. It's not just all about praying your rosaries, okay? It is, and we do it because it's important. We have to get God's help. But if, Joe, not for nothing, if you bury your head in the sand and you don't want to talk about politics and think that just going to mass and just praying about these things are going to solve all of our problems, I think you're mistaken. My point in bringing up the prayer group is these men, they post a lot about politics, Joe, because politics and Catholicism go together. We have to talk about these things. And honestly, because of the elitism, Joe, that we're persecuted by right now in America, both on the right and the left, okay, it makes it even more so we have to talk about the politics, I think. Joe, I'm going to...
No, I would agree. I mean, I'll be honest, the more I've been involved in this, and we've been doing this for, I think, 4 years now, I can remember Bill Donahue's telling us that he's registered as an independent. And I see the wisdom in that. I will say this. I mean, people see things through their own lens. I try to step back when I look at things. I try. But I can remember I have a friend, a lifelong friend, who is a staunch Democrat. I wouldn't say he's woke, but he definitely is a Democrat. He has like what's called around in the New Jersey way, like Hudson County Democrats, people who come from, Hudson County, Jersey City. It's like ingrained in them. Anyway, he's not woke, but I can remember one time in a conversation with him, he was just like, but you're not objective. And I agreed with him. I'm not. I try to be, though, because and the more I get involved in this, what I'm trying to define, how I want to define myself. I don't even define myself as a Republican anymore. I simply don't. I don't even want to define myself, to be truthful with you, as a conservative, because I have read some disturbing things from conservatives.
Joe, let me cut you off real quick. Joe, real quick. No, I agree. I want to come back because somebody's asking a very important question. Aethna Murphy is in the chat room. She says, is this a Catholic show? Yes, it is. We talk about a lot of things, Miss Murphy, but this is a underlying everything. Joe and I are Catholic men who are talking about things on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, that are of importance in our view to all Catholics out there. Joe, I cut you up, but I wanted to...
No, it's okay, but I try to look at views as a Catholic because the church, while it should be in the public square, the church is not a Democrat or a Republican. Both are flawed. Right. I mean, both are flawed. So I try to look at issues through that lens as a Catholic. And that's important that we don't get lost in that.
Well, Joe, talk about that. Okay. Talk about that a little bit, because here's my point. In the current state of the American political system, those things which are intrinsic evils have become political, which they never should have been. Okay. So let's just use the example of the most obvious example, which is abortion. Okay. And then there are certain things that fall under our prudential judgment, yes. But nonetheless, Catholics of good conscience need to be able to engage one another when there is a disagreement on areas of prudential judgment. So, on the one hand, you have intrinsic evil. On the other hand, you have positions that people take and they say, well, that's under my prudential judgment. Give you an example, Joe. Progressive taxation. I'm opposed to that. I know someone of goodwill who is a good and faithful Catholic can say that they're in favor of that. Again, but here's my point. We should be able to have a Catholic discussion and talk about our differences when it comes to that. The problem is anything I just said, Joe, is out the window because we live in such a polarized situation right now. What say you?
No, but that's the point. Like, you shouldn't have an identity outside of Catholicism when you make statements politically as a Catholic, in my view. Obviously, the intrinsic evils speak for themselves, but even like to think it's through the lens of the gospel. You know, Christ went against both the establishment Jews as well as the Romans. I mean, like, he didn't, like as Jesse Romero would say, like, we're not left or right, we're right and wrong. Like, that's how we should view things. I don't want any title next to my name. I don't want any. Now, am I objective? No. I try to be, though. And I think, to be honest with you, people, when you do, you're going to, as you said, E. Michael Jones, he doesn't sometimes take sides. He goes, but like on certain things.
Joe, he equally pisses off the left.
No, but that should be, to be honest with you, Catholics should not be afraid to do that. Like, again, you know, like because it's the truth. You know, and we're going to talk about it later. We're going to talk about the 11-point plan, but one of those things is take immigration. Like, I could use this as Trump. Trump was for merit-based immigration. Now, as a person who is thinking from a utilitarian perspective, that's the way to go. I want engineers to come in. I want doctors. I want scientists. But as a Catholic, that's not right.
Right.
Like it's not right.
Joe, what did we say on this show? I'm going to cut you off because I love the fact that you brought up, and we have a lot of new members that are listening to us on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, chiming into the chat room. Okay. Joe, what have we been saying for a long time? My criteria for you coming to this country is what Jesse Romero said. Are you going to obey the laws of our nation? Are you going to respect the host nation that's bringing you in? Okay. Are you going to work? Okay. Those are things. See, I agree with you. The right would say, no, we want the engineers, the doctors, the lawyers, and the blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, I want the guy that works on the farm. You want to know why I want him? Because he believes in Jesus Christ. How about that for criteria? Do you know where I'm going with that, Joe?
No, I get it. But also,
and that's where you're going to equally, real quick, and I'll leave it over to you, Joe. That's where you're going to piss off the left and the right. The left, by the way, just to digress for 1 second, the left, what they do is they take advantage and they look down their nose at the Hispanics coming across the border, and they look down their nose at their Catholicism. They keep those people in the dark as far as the agenda of the Democrat Party, okay, particularly when it comes to abortion, because they know those Hispanics would never vote for them based on that. And the right, like you said, Joe, well, they want to take all the doctors, lawyers, engineers out of Mexico, Honduras, all of Central America, and the whole 9 yards, and they just want them and leave everybody else behind. Both are wrong, Joe Ressinello.
Oh, no question. Because, I mean, there is, like, you have to be concerned about your neighbor. I mean, I have seen, like, poverty south of the border. I mean, I've been to Haiti twice. I mean, like, I have seen poverty.
Poorest country in the Western Hemisphere.
And so my point is, like, as a Catholic, there has to be some concern. I get it. Now, to a degree, though, you can't just let a floodgate, because that's not being,
No, that's what the left wants. That's where
they want vote.
That's
about voting. I mean, any person who is thinking knows why are they want Texas and Arizona to turn blue. They also are shipping people. Why do you think they're sending people to? I mean, any person who's thinking knows why they're opening the border. I mean, but I'm not thinking from that perspective. I'm thinking there has to be, we already let people come in. Frankly, a lot. America is
Oh, we let in a
constantly,
million. We
yeah,
let in a million. This is what I hate about the left. Stop lying. Okay. Don't make Americans who want a secure border out to be hateful racists. Okay. We let and welcome a million American
yeah, that's
immigrants
fair.
into this country
Absolutely.
every year. But when you start to point your finger, we're going to get into this plan that Rick Scott put forward. That, by the way, like this, Joe Resinello, watch my hand, Joe. Like that. You got slapped down by McConnell because this talk is about elitism. See,
Well,
if Joe, if
it's
you're
funny
if you're a
when you
faithful,
sent me this article, because at work Joe and I were talking before the show. A friend of mine at work, Rick Scott, wrote an op-ed in the Journal, Wall Street Journal, which I read. He's the type of senator who I like, and I'll tell you why. And my friend, we were chatting about it, because politicians should basically go into this with this idea: you don't like what I'm saying, then vote me out. I
sure.
am not here to have a job forever. I have a skill set. Either I'm a lawyer and I know how to write and interpret the law, or I have acumen in business that I've learned over the years that I can apply in this situation to help my fellow citizens in a way that they need. But when you start getting married to parties and to ideas, to be honest with you, I'm going to use a dirty word, you become a whore. And that is exactly what we have. They're whores. And the idea should be this: I'm running. You like what I say or you don't. Vote for me. And if not, I'll go get a job.
That's all.
And that's it. And this guy, Rick Scott, when I read that article, I believe it was last Friday in the Journal, I was impressed. He didn't go through all the 11 points. He focused on one of the points, which was term limits, which is one of the points we'll talk about. But I like that. And he says this is what I like, talking about the McConnell thing. He says, in the real world behind the Beltway, Republicans and independents demand bold action and a plan to save our nation. That's true. Now, in the world beyond the Beltway, I want to focus on that. When we're going to go through some of these points,
Right.
Joe basically noted the support that the nation has behind the points. It shows that we're not a republic or a democracy. It's an oligarchy. We vote people in and they do whatever the hell they want to do.
Totally, totally, totally. I wish people would understand that. In other words, look, Joe, there are Republicans I like. By the way, right now, there are no Democrats I like. And why? You know why? Of their own doing, not by my own prejudice. Even a guy in pro-life circles, guys like Tim Ryan, who was pro-life, he says, I've grown on the issue. Now I'm for a woman's right. No, you sold your soul, Tim. Go to confession. He's Catholic. He's in Ohio. He's a congressman. Go to confession and repent of your position. I don't agree with any Democrats, Joe. None. I'm sure there are some out there, but they're either voted out and primaried out, like Dan Lipinski, who was pro-life for years. But even he's a hack for the Democrat Party. And I would tell him that right to his face. That's not our issue. Our issue is oligarchs. Those in the Republican Party that use us, Joe, real quick, they use us because they know we're pro-life. We're abortion abolitionists. They don't do a damn thing about that. They know we want better wages for workers. They pay lip service to that. They don't do a damn thing about that. Joe, I'll hand it over to you, but you're exactly right. It's oligarchs that our anger is directed at.
Well, that's the country. I mean, I said this during Obama, his 8 years. I mean, this is an oligarchy. If you think it's not, you're dreaming. You vote for people. You cannot be a free. Here's the problem, though. You can't be a free thinker in the system. When you are, you're crushed by your own people. You can't think that you're going to go in, you get voted in, and you're going to move and shake the world, because your own people will shut you down. Like, it's tribal. It's the way that the sausage is made. You can't go in there and be like, well, you know something, guys, I am a Republican, but you know something? I kind of am on the side of labor here. I can't go with you guys on that. They'll crush you.
You're out. You're out.
That's the problem. You saw that with little taste of it with what Lieberman tried that. Then they pushed him out. He became an independent.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Joe Lieberman, who was a liberal to the max, okay, except on one issue. Now, this might be because he's Jewish, okay, but we'll just say this. He supported Bush's intervention in Iraq, the invasion of Iraq. He supported that. Now, we're not going to comment on the invasion of Iraq tonight, okay, or the war that's going on right now and the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. That's not tonight, okay. But here's Lieberman's sin, Joe Resinello. He bucked his party and supported George Bush. That's tribalism. And he voted, Joe Lieberman has no problem with abortion up to on demand. All right. No problem with contraception. No problem with contradicting every teaching of the Catholic Church because he's not Catholic. Okay. So he doesn't care. Okay. He's not conservative in any way, but he supported George Bush on Iraq. And therefore, the Democrat Party primaried him, and Lieberman had to get reelected as an independent. Republicans will do the same thing. We're going to get into it in a little bit. You start going into some of these conservative, evangelical, Republican representatives and saying, oh, we got to stop supporting the Chamber of Commerce because they want to bring in illegal or immigrants and people with visas to take American jobs. We have to end that. We have to protect our workers. You know what they'll tell you? Kick rocks.
Well, that's again, it has to be right and wrong. Like, that's why, like, I respect a guy in New Jersey, Chris Smith, who's in Congress. He's a voice and he gets elected. I don't know how he gets elected. He's adamantly pro-life. To be honest with you, he like basically holds his position like a Catholic. He talks about human rights. I mean, I have a great deal of respect for him. He'll go nowhere though. Nowhere. And you see, this is the problem. Like, I think we have to get away from labels. Like, it should be issues. Is it right or is it wrong? And because ultimately that's all that matters. But that's not the way everyone gets into these tribal like ideas. And I'm telling you, the right does it too. And
Joe, I'm glad you said that. Let's get into it. Let's get into the meat and potatoes at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room is open at crusadechannel.com/chat. All right, so you could make your opinions known in there. Joe, let's get into the right. Here's the elitism. Now, this is what I'm talking about, okay? You mentioned Rick Scott. Very quickly, quick quote. He said, Scott said they see no point in taking control of Congress if they're simply going to return to business as usual. I think we, as conservative-minded people, we're tired of business as usual. They take advantage of our vote. But here, Joe Resinello, this is the bothersome part. Here's McConnell, okay? And, not we, all right, deciding what's right and wrong. I will decide in consultation with my members. That doesn't mean everybody. That means Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, and a few other more establishment Republicans. What to put on the floor, McConnell said. And let me tell you what will not be part of our agenda. We will not have as part of our agenda a bill that raises taxes on half the American people and sunset Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. We'll focus on those things that the American people are cared about: inflation, energy, defense, the border, and crime. Now, on the surface, Joe, that's why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe, because we're going to break down that nonsense, okay? On the surface, McConnell is demagoguing what Scott said. Scott didn't say that he wanted to raise taxes on half the American people, okay? He didn't say that he wanted to sunset Social Security. He's talking about reforming these things that are causing a lot of problems. Let's talk about, for example, okay, let's start with the first thing, term limits, okay? And Joe, we're not going to go through all of them, okay? But we'll get to some of the more salient points that Scott made. Term limits. McConnell is never, ever going to be in favor of term limits. Well, Joe, how long's he been a senator?
About 79% of America's for term limits.
Thank you.
He should be for term limits, but why would he be? Because he's a career politician. Why? I mean, here's a guy I respected. What's his face? From Arizona. What the heck? I can't even believe
McCain.
McCain. Obviously a person of integrity with regard to before he became a senator. I don't want to talk about his record as a voting like senator, but as a man. Like, here was a guy in jail. He was definitely, a favored son. His father was powerful, and he decided to stay in jail. I mean, wounded. I mean, dude, that is nothing to sneeze at. Like, to be honest with you, I've been to Vietnam. It's hot as hell. I mean, like, he was hardly in an air-conditioned room. He had broken arms. He stayed in jail for years. I'm sure he wasn't eating, good food. He probably had dysentery. I mean, this is nothing to sneeze at. With that said, get a job, John. How's that sound? You've been there too damn long. Get an effing job. How does that sound? Ted Kennedy, get a job.
Well, and that's the most nauseating part is Kennedy didn't even need a job. Kennedy, Joe Rossinello.
Well, neither did McCain. His wife was rich as Roosevelt, dude.
No, I agree with you. But at the end of the day, the Kennedys never had any reason to be in government. The old man, Joe Kennedy, wanted them in government because it wasn't enough that they had
power
at the time an ungodly amount of money through stock manipulation and alcohol bootlegging. Everybody knows that about the Kennedy family. If Balzac said every fortune is based on a crime, it never was more applicable than to the Kennedy family. And that's the truth. My point is that, Joe, that's why we're having this conversation, because we're talking about elitism, okay? The Kennedys never should have been in politics. They had money. Who the hell are they? Why? Because you got $100 million, 200, 300, $1 billion. You deserve to be in government. Joe Rossinello should run for Congress in Southern Bergen County. I should run for Congress here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Guess what? What makes you more qualified, because you have a bigger bank book, to tell the rest of us what to do? And that's exactly what they do. And that's what McConnell does. Joe, you said to McCain, God rest his soul, get a job. McConnell needs to get a job.
Oh, was that a guy?
Real quick, and I'm going to hand it over to you. Rick Scott's telling McConnell, go get a job, and McConnell's shooting it down.
Well, why would you? Because it's power. I mean, that one is the top of the list. I think you'd get a better field of people if you knew that you're there just to serve. Because here's the deal. You're not staying long. But that's another thing. And why would you? Because it's a cushy job. It comes with a lot of perks. I'm in charge, and I'm not giving it up. And that's sad. That further points to the fact that we're an oligarchy, and because we are. But let's talk about like some other things that he was talking about, Scott, that is, in his points. Voter ID, 76% of America is for it. I mean, it just makes sense. It makes sense.
The problem? Right.
It shouldn't be any problem. But clearly the Democrats, and I'll point fingers there, they want illegal immigrants to vote. That's why the border's open, people. And they're doing that at all costs. They're doing that. Basically, the cartels are basically running people through. Don't think that that's not happening through the border. I'm not saying everybody. That's slave labor that's coming through, organized crime. They're coming into a system basically that is ill prepared for them in many of those towns, school systems. Let's have a plan. There is no plan. The plan is open the border. Hopefully Texas and Arizona turn blue. And then we're in power forever. That's the plan. Any person who doesn't see it that way, frankly, you're not paying attention.
But then here's the thing, Joe. Then why is Mitch McConnell opposed to this point in Scott's plan requiring voters to show ID in elections?
Well, in fairness, I didn't hear him point that. I think it's more of a power move, Joe. I think McConnell, because I'll be honest with you, if Trump does run, and I'm going to juxtapose McConnell to Lindsey Graham.
Okay.
Lindsey Graham bet on the right horse. He said that this is Trump's party because it is, like it or not. McConnell spoke out against Trump. If Trump becomes the president,
McConnell's done.
You're 100% correct.
Right.
And this is a power move. Again, you're not there to wield power. You're there to serve. We got the wrong guys and gals in the job. And this is why there should be term limits. But here's the problem with that, and this goes all the way back to Adams. The system doesn't work without virtuous people.
No matter what.
And in a morally corrupt nation votes for people who are morally corrupt. Now, that doesn't mean they're endemically corrupt. There's aspects of all people that are good, but we are a nation that are adrift from God. And when we focus back to that, then we will have leaders that are virtuous. Well, we don't have that. And I actually think a lot of this, now he didn't attack every point, but I actually think he's threatened by Scott. He's threatened by him saying, I have an 11-point plan. And McConnell's like, no. I'm in charge. I'm in charge. I set the tone.
Well, see, that's what's got to change. And the conservative Republicans in the Senate need to tell Mitch McConnell, Mitch, you did a great job on judges. Now, when I say that, I want to make it clear to our audience out there at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. He did a great job at rallying the troops to support Trump judges. Whether those judges turn out to bear fruit for us conservative Catholics out there, traditional Catholics, remains to be seen. McConnell did a great job at keeping the Republicans together to support Kavanaugh, to support Gorsuch, to support Amy Coney Barrett, to support federal judges. He did do that. But, Joe, if he does that and he caves on everything else, then what good is he?
Well, he's dude, all of them. Joe, I'll be honest. I mean, I don't put much. I partake in the political arena. I always vote. It's actually our obligation as Catholics, to be truthful with you. Padre Pio used to vote, believe it or not. So I mean, he
probably voted for a guy he knew was going to hell.
No, but I'm just saying, we have to vote. And a lot of times it's the lesser of two evils. No one is perfect.
Well, that's the unfortunate part about it.
And you have to weigh things.
Trump, in many ways, I like the way Mike Church always put it. I think he was doing his job. I'm 51% Trump. I love Joe Biden, the way he tries to make it seem like we're sort of Trump sycophants. And there are some out there. As a conservative Catholic, I'm a Trump 51 guy. I'm a Democrat 0 guy, Joe Resinello. We've been saying from the beginning, we can't vote for those people on anything. I can't find one thing to vote for them, to vote with them on. Democrats.
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, the Democrats, I think I am for immigration. I'm for reasonable immigration. I am for labor. You know what I'm saying? Fair labor. I'm not for union abuses, but we could have a conversation. We could even have a conversation on corporate tax. I'm not for excessive corporate tax because people get laid off. Let's be honest. I'm also for some form that we have to reform the healthcare system. And I'm going to tell you this, it's not going to get reformed by talking. And I will tell you this, benefits right now in America are for privileged people. And it can't be that way. No. I'm going to tell you that right now. Every person is entitled to healthcare. And businesses should provide it, but they're not. And it is turning into a situation, let's be honest, that only privileged people have good benefits. Yeah, that can't be the case. So I can have a conversation. I'm not for socialized medicine, but if the Republicans don't provide a plan, guess what? We're getting socialized medicine, America.
Joe, they've been talking. You mentioned John McCain. McCain was in the Senate when Obamacare got passed, okay? They've been talking about a replacement for Obamacare for years. What have they done? They've done nothing. McCain came out of basically health, hospital care, suffering with cancer, simply to go to Washington to go and vote against repealing Obamacare because he hated Trump. I voted for John McCain in 2008. That's what you do to me, Mr. McCain, because of your own personal animosity towards the president. You won't vote for something you ran on. You ran on.
Well, Joe, so many people didn't vote for Trump. I mean, I'm more than a 51% Trump supporter. But I will tell you this: Trump is obnoxious, like obnoxious as a human.
Joe, I got to cut you off. And again, I'm not disagreeing with you, even though you might think that I am, but I want to give you a football analogy, if you don't mind, okay? Joe and I are both New York Jets fans, okay? Not in recent years because the NFL's gotten woke, but in our lives, we've been New York Jets fan. Here's the difference, Joe, is the difference between the guy who actually gets things done. For years and years and years, we've had as Jets coaches guys who are inept, guys who are quiet, guys who don't say anything, guys who kind of walk the line. And then Rex Ryan comes in and he's loud and he's obnoxious. The press doesn't know how to deal with them. All right. He made some boneheaded moves, but he got us to the championship 2 years in a row. Now, my larger point is this. I'll take the loudmouth who gets things done over the quiet guy who doesn't know how to get out of his own way.
Well, I voted for him. I'd vote for him again, but I could. The only reason why I bring that up, a lot of people mistakenly just focused on that, because he did succeed in many respects. Many, if you're being
Well, the
fair.
pro-life movement really, Joe, as two pro-life Americans, Catholic Americans, I think you and I can honestly say I have more of a beef with the establishment pro-life movement than I do with Donald Trump. He actually got many more things done
No
than you
question. And
people have.
nobody's perfect. And again, like nobody's perfect, including myself. So I mean, like, yeah, I mean, but people focused in on that is what I'm saying. Like, clearly. Listen, America is in a lot of trouble. I mean, like ultimately, I'll be truthful with you, Joe. I think we've passed the point of no return with regard to fixing our problems politically. I actually think God is going to fix our problems, and it's not going to be pretty. I don't, people have walled off. They don't listen. They don't talk to each other. They're not having the conversation, and our issues run so deep.
Joe, can I ask you a question? Did you ever hear the story about the guy who takes his friend who's a priest to the boxing match? Did you ever hear that story?
No, I have not.
So a guy calls up his friend who's a priest who he knows is a boxing fan, and he brings him to the boxing match. And that same guy, his friend is one of the boxers. Okay. So the priest, the one guy and his friend who's the boxer. So the fight's going on. Okay. And the friend who's the boxer is getting pummeled. Okay. He's getting his butt whooped. Okay. I could use different words. This is a family show. I'll keep it that way. Okay. He's getting his butt whooped. And the friend turns to the priest watching this and says to the priest, "Father, could you say a prayer for my friend?" And the priest says to him, "I will absolutely say a prayer for your friend, but it would be helpful if he could throw a punch." Now, do you understand why I said that little story? Of course, we have to get God back into our culture. Of course, we have to start praying personal holiness, okay? Whether you're a Catholic or whether you're any other religion that believes in objective moral or objective morality, start living a holier life, fight against pornography, abortion, all this stuff, okay? We understand that. But, Joe, it would help if we could throw a punch.
But
It
the
would
problem
help
is,
if we voted for people
I get it,
that
but
actually had our interests, Joe.
but they won't, because people aren't formed, Joe.
Well, then
And
we're crushed.
no,
Then we're
but we're
crushed.
well, that's where God is going to come in. You see,
No, but here's my point, and I'm going to hand it right back to you, Joe. Right back to you. If you want to fight the fight, you got to bring God into it, but you got to get out there and fight the fight. And if you're not going to fight the fight, you bring in God. God's going to give you a much harder time than if you did it beforehand. You know where I'm? You know what I'm
no,
trying to
but
say?
you see, this is the thing. Like, people aren't listening. Like, you could say it perfectly. People aren't interested in the political savior that's conservative, Joe. He's not getting elected. Republicans aren't even going to vote for him. They're not interested. They're not interested in the virtuous man, the hero. He's laughed at. Like, the country is lost. And the only thing, politics is just, it's noise in the background. No one's listening to it. God is going to get people's attention. Like, because that's the only thing people are going to listen to. And it's probably going to come through suffering.
Well, I was going to say, Joe, that was my larger point. If you wait for God to do it, and God will,
Well, he
okay,
will, because he
in His
loves us.
mercy, but it's going to be a lot more painful to do that than to stop, let's say, for argument's sake, watching porn
Well,
or fighting
look
against
at
abortion.
the Old Testament, the story of the Israelites. how they would basically be faithful. You had a king, David, a great king. Then you had his son, Solomon, a great king who, at the end of his life, married women who did not worship the true God. His kingdom got infiltrated by their beliefs, and his son effed it up. He said, it's not going to happen during your kingdom. It will happen during your son's. And then what happened? It's just a perpetual cycle of human nature. It's the way it works. Like, and that is what's going to happen here. There is no political savior. Now, that doesn't mean you just don't. I vote. I open my mouth. But I mean, I pray the rosary in the public square every first Saturday. I am on this show. I speak. I like to think the Catholic line. I don't say it perfectly, but I try to be fair.
No, real quick, but that's my point. But that's my point in telling the story about the boxer. That means you're throwing the punch.
I get it.
That's what that means. It means you're active in the politics. You're active in the culture. You're praying the rosary. That's my point. Is that yes, of course. But you have people that just like sit there. They don't do anything, and I just again, Joe, I get very frustrated.
I guess where we disagree is I don't know how effective the punch is, Joe. You see, that punch through words is a weak punch. St. Francis's punch was the punch of Mike Tyson. St. Dominic's punch was the punch of Mike Tyson. Words are a weak punch. You see, it's not going to change anything. Donald Trump was a weak punch. He's gone. And even if he gets reelected again, someone's going to come and take away everything that he did. You see, that's where we don't agree. Like, the guy who does have the punch is St. Francis. He reformed the church. Like, politics is not going to do it. And I'll be honest with you, we could say it's like going to Thanksgiving and arguing with your uncle. He doesn't hear you. You could say anything. It could be laid out perfectly. You could be talking about abortion. You could be like, how could you support third trimester abortion? Whatever. Joe, right. Pass the gravy. Right. Pass the gravy. But meanwhile, if you're a saint, he won't say that. You see, like, it's like when Mother Teresa spoke at the prayer breakfast, the whole place gave her a standing ovation. Only Clinton and Gordon stand up and they look like dummies. Like, that's how we change the culture. Like we could say all we want. No one's listening. Like, seriously, no one's listening.
Well, look. Obviously, at the front line with Joe and Joe, we're listening. We're trying to figure out what's going on out there. All the people at the Crusade channel, we're listening. We're doing a lot of talking, but we're doing a lot of listening too. I do want to go back because we don't have a lot of time. Because really, what we're talking about here, Joe Resinello, is the elitism that we have to fight against. And you make a good point. Don't look for political saviors, because the elitism is coming from the right and the left. And in this case, it's Rick Scott, who's offering some common sense proposals, some 11-point rescue plan that he says will save America. And he's getting shut down by a Republican, Mitch McConnell. Here's an interesting one, Joe. And this ties in, so I'll actually mention a couple. Promoting the idea that there are only two genders, favored by 52%. Now, that might seem like a low number, okay? But there's about 35% who say they don't know, and about 15% of people who are just wacko. The 35%, I don't know what's wrong with the water they're drinking, but they need just a little bit of convincing, and they'll come over to the right side. Here's the other one that I found interesting, Joe, because this is something that pro-life politicians are fearful of, but yet 42% of Americans support the idea of teaching that abortion ends a human life. 41% oppose, and the rest are undecided. Now, what does that tell me, Joe? And then I'm going to hand it over to you. Those who are undecided can easily come into the pro-life camp, or it's not a preeminent issue for them, meaning a pro-life, staunchly pro-life politician can get elected, by one of those people. Those people will vote for that person because abortion's not a preeminent issue for them. They don't care if it's legal or illegal. It doesn't affect them, and they don't care. But it's interesting to note that pro-life politicians, Joe, who take advantage of our vote, like Mitch McConnell, they abandon us when it comes to really getting down and dirty in the abortion fight. Yet 42% of the American people support the idea of teaching that abortion ends a human life. What's the disconnect there, Joe?
Well, it's sex, because Republicans have casual sex too. If you want to win the abortion fight, you have to get into people's mind that you have to be chaste before marriage and that you have to be open to life in marriage. You know, a lot of married couples have abortions too.
Sure.
So, and that also entails contraception.
Right.
That means you have to be against it. And America, as my friend John Reformato told me, who's also a Democrat, but he's not insane. Like he said, the horse is out of the barn, Joe. You're right. I agree with you. It's out of the barn. And he's right. The only person who's putting that horse in the barn is God. You're not going to talk anybody. Republicans have casual sex too. Republicans cheat on their wife too. And that's why they don't care about abortion, the issue. They'll care because they kind of have to toe the line to a degree. But I will tell you this right now: if the abortion people, the pro-aborts, basically said, listen, they limited abortion like they do in Europe to say, I don't know, 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans would be on board.
Of course
They
they
wouldn't.
would.
It would be a non-issue because they have casual sex too. That goes back to the country is not virtuous. It's selfish.
You're right, Joe. You're
And that
right.
is where we're wrong. And like, we're not going to get right. The only way, I say this all the time, the prodigal son God got his attention when he was eating the food of the pigs. It took that. Then he came around. And that's a good thing. God bless them. Some people continue to eat the food of the pigs and they don't care. They double down. They triple down. They die like Joseph Stalin with their fist in the air. But ultimately, that's the attention that we'll get. And God did that to the Israelites in the Old Testament. They had the right way. They blew it. And then he got their attention again. He's going to do that to us. Why? Because he
That's right.
loves us.
Well, Father Rutler said that. Father Rutler made it clear. You know, he goes the modernist, even the religious person, even the religious so-called religious Christian modernist believes in let's say the Christian God, but doesn't believe in punishment. Father Rutler says these people with their watered down Christianity, they believe in a God without punishment. He goes, God punishes us because God loves us so much. Joe, what father doesn't punish their child that's gone off in the wrong direction? It's love. If your son, let's say, God forbids, on drugs, okay, your son's a teenager and is on drugs, okay, what is it? Love to tell him, knock yourself out? You know, let's just be happy for one another. Why can't we all just be happy for one another? God punishes us because God loves us. And God, if we don't straighten ourselves out and at least get back to some semblance. Remember, Joe, God did give the Ninevites some time when he sent Jonah. He sent Jonah and he said, they will repent, but go there. And the king, Jonah was afraid. He didn't want to say it. Okay. He ran away. God brought him back with the fish. Okay. And then Jonah went there and the king repented in sackcloth and ashes, and they were spared for a time. God will spare us, but we have to, again, here's my larger point, Joe, and it's not political. I don't want you to take it the wrong way, but we have to throw that punch. It's our skin in the game. God wants to know that we have our skin in the game. Okay.
Well, I'll tell
That
you
we're
this.
fighting for a better culture, a better politics, a better society for our children, for our families. He wants to know that we're stepping up and fighting the fight, I think.
Well, I recommend to all the Crusade listeners the book Beheading Hydra. I'll be truthful with you. We've interviewed Father Longendecker a couple times. You know, he's pretty out there in that book. He's pretty direct. I like, we've talked to him, and that didn't come through as much as when I finished and read the whole book. I recommend it. And I will tell you this: to live the life of a holy man is hard. It's like it's harder than saying things. It's harder then it's hard. It's the hardest thing someone could do. And frankly, there's a lot of talkers out there, and there's a lot less holiness. And that is what the basically prescription to the ills of the country that Long and Decker puts forth. Like, no one's listening. And if you really want to do something, radically live your faith. And I will tell you this right now, you will influence more people than anything you will ever say, because it's proven. Look at the lives of the saints. More so than anybody politically, Saint Dominic had influenced the world infinitely more than any politician in America ever.
Right.
Not even close. It's not even a close second.
Right.
Saint Francis, Teresa of Avila, Catherine of Siena. And if you really want to throw a punch, get radical. Start fasting.
But
Start
Joe, here,
giving alms. Live radical poverty. How
but
about
Joe, that's
your own? Joe, that's how you change the world, my brother.
I get it, Joe. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But remember something too. This isn't the Europe of the Middle Ages. Okay,
Joe, people have eyes. I've seen this with the sisters. Men that came out of prison, they get baptized. Like, radical Catholicism stops traffic. I've seen it. Bad people, not people who are like Democrats who drink Grey Goose. I'm talking about bad people. Like, it stops traffic. It's the, as Barron put it, it's the lightning, it's the thunder of Catholicism. Christ stopped traffic, like, by accepting his death. He didn't open his mouth. Look how Pilate reacted to Jesus. He didn't know what to say. He was standing in front of a frigging bag man. He was paralyzed. He didn't know what to say. Like, that is how radical. We want to change the culture. Get real serious. Put your podcast down. Live radically. Have children. Against the culture. Give to the poor. Live modestly.
But Joe, let me ask you this. All those things you say are 100% absolutely true. But what we're really talking about then at the end of the day, particularly right now, I think, when it comes to American politics, is that I want to defend our rights to be able to do everything you just said. And when it comes to the politics, yes, the devil and his minions, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. They do. When you embrace the devil, you belong to him. When you embrace Christ, you belong to Christ. Okay. Those who embrace the demonic and the satanic in our culture, abortion and everything else. Joe, the problem is we are called to live that way. And ultimately, if we're called, we've said on the show, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, at the front line with Joe and Joe. We've said, Joe, now for what, 3 or 4 years? When the guillotines come, you and I are the first ones will be in there. There's no question about it. They'll drag us right out into Times Square, and it's the French Revolution all over again. I get it. But then what are we really talking about with the politics? We need to defend those people, including ourselves, that want to do everything that you just described, from the elites who would prevent us from doing so. Again, both on the right and the left.
Well, clearly,
you follow my logic on that?
No, you have to vote and you have to speak. But what I'm saying is, like there have been saints in much harder times than we have. Like, think about the first 300 years of Catholicism in Rome. They set you on fire, like literally, like put you on a stake and set you on fire. I mean, like, you're not like ostracized by woke, like jean tight wearing kids from Brooklyn. They set you on fire, and yet the faith like spread. What I'm saying is, like, people have to get serious, and you're seeing it. You're seeing young people embrace the faith. We interview a lot of people. You're seeing it. We don't do a good job in terms as Catholics. Like, I can remember in terms of living it. We don't. I'm telling you right now, I can remember going to, believe it or not, it was in Portland, Oregon. It was a Dominican church with my family. It was a very Orthodox like congregation. My mother was like, wow, look at these families. There's like 8 kids, 10 kids. She's like, are these Mormons? She was making a joke. Catholics, we're not like, we're like everybody else in the culture. We walk, we drink the same frigging drink. We act the same. We shouldn't even have to tell people we're Catholic. They should just know it. And if you want to change the culture, how do you do that is the question.
Well, Joe, here's the thing too. It comes down to identity. I mean, that's all we're living through now is identity. So people, okay, we criticize those who identify primarily on race or primarily on sex. Okay. We talk all the time about what our primary identity is. Joe will say it again. We have a lot of new listeners out there that listen to us both on social media and on the Crusade channel. Okay. How do we identify? We're Roman Catholic American men of Italian descent. I think that that's a fair identification, Joe, and it's rooted in reality. Okay. The problem is that's an authentic identity, what I just described. Being a Democrat or Republican, okay,
Oh.
I lean Republican. I don't lean Democrat. That's because of what they do, not because of what I do. I could find more in the Republican Party, but if I make that my identity, I become Sean Hannity. And I'm sorry to sound judgmental towards Sean Hannity, but I become Sean Hannity, who let's say is an evangelical Christian. Because he was born Catholic. He left the church recently. He said, quote, he claimed over corruption. But then that becomes your identity. You got Christianity in America, which becomes identified with a political party. And again, it's a crisis of identity. If we all identified ourselves in America as faithful Catholics, and fought for the faith and everything that that means, okay, both on the level of piety and the level of culture and politics, Joe, this country would turn around like that.
Oh, I agree.
No
I mean, but
question.
people like,
Even though we're in the minority, even
and
though we're the
oh,
minority,
I agree. People,
because we
listen,
would become that leaven that you always talk about. We would become that leaven, Joe. I'll hand it
well,
over
we
to
have
you.
to we have to transform ourselves. That's why we're, here we are in Lent. I mean, like that requires a tremendous amount of grace, a tremendous amount of grace. To live a holy life is not something you set your mind to. You just do it. You need grace, and
Right.
to get grace, you have to open yourself up to it, and that's hard. If it was easy, everyone would do it. They don't do it because it's hard. And if we did it, we would change the country. And I'm going to tell you what has driven me is if you say you're Catholic, then show me. I could remember the first time I went to India. I was in a lukewarm parish, and frankly, I was trying to change it. I started to teach. I would teach lots of different things. I had a Bible study I used to run. I used to do Lenten classes. I used to teach RCIA, and the priest wouldn't have it. And I can remember I was like, I just got back from India. He stopped for a minute. It stunned him. And then he just continued on, just glossed right over it.
Mm-hmm.
If you say you're Catholic, show me. Show me. I don't want to hear it, to be honest with you. Show me. And to show me is hard.
Well,
and that's what we're not willing to do.
Joe, I think a lot of people would do it. Willing to do it. I think a lot of people need to be encouraged. I think that's one of the reasons why we're here. And Joe, we're coming up to the end of the show, so unfortunately, we're running out of time on the Crusade channel. Joe, I always have to stop and pause and remember why we're here. Jean Wise is in the chat room. She says, "I'm being drawn out of Protestantism into the Catholic faith. I'm learning it's the actual church Jesus said he will build. The enemy did a good job hiding it all these years." Joe, obviously, we're going to be praying for Jean and her continued
Amen.
conversion to the Catholic Church. Jean, that's why we're here. We talk about all these things because they're of importance to Roman Catholics. But ultimately, Joe and I want to evangelize people into the church. God bless you, Jean. You will be in our prayers. Joe, I'm going to leave you with this because we only literally have about 2 minutes. Just a warning, and I want you to expand on it. You got the George Bush Institute, the Chamber of Commerce, the Koch brothers, and all other donor class organizations. And what are they doing? Joe Rossinello, they're quote unquote Republican. They want Joe Biden and members of Congress to pass amnesty for illegal aliens, and the whole 9 yards. It's a whole kind of like immigration. They want to expand immigration into the United States, and basically at a time when employers, now this is their reason, Joe, employers are struggling to find workers to fill jobs in many industries, the coalition writes, okay, while 12 million Americans are jobless and another 3.7 million are underemployed but want full-time jobs. Joe, is it moral to do this?
Well,
In other words,
one could always look at ulterior motives. I mean, labor is definitely an issue. I mean, you saturate the labor market. I mean, with the Koch
Koch brothers.
I
Koch.
mean, like, are they for labor? I mean, we've seen this in the construction industry. And to be honest with you, the statistic that I read, the article that jumped out at me, was from 1979 to 2013. Wage growth from the bottom 90% of Americans has grown just 15%, while wage growth for the top 1% of Americans are nearly 140% higher. I mean, that's why you have the Bernie Sanders lunatics out there, because of that, because clearly that is real, and the middle class is shrinking. So we have to look for equitable solutions. But with that said, and this is not even a political, aspect, one has to temper that with caring for poor people coming into the country. My family wouldn't be here. I'm not a merit-based immigrant. My grandfather worked in a warehouse in Newark. So, I mean, like, it has to be tempered. And to your point, Joe, do they have ulterior motives? I don't trust them. They're institutional men. I mean, there's so many of them.
Right.
I think, like, again, getting back to the original point, I am Catholic. I try to look at issues, and I try to weigh them against my Catholic faith. And then I vote. And I vote for basically the best person I can. But I do vote, because we should.
Right.
But ultimately, the catalyst, I believe, to change the country begins with me. I have to change. And if we embrace our faith radically, living it, loving God and loving our neighbor, I'm going to tell you right now, you'll change more than you ever thought you would. And that's how it begins. And Joe, I'm going to tell you right now, we're not doing a good job across the board, from prelates to the people in the pew. We could do a lot better. People are more concerned with going to the gym. People are more concerned with making money. People are more concerned with materialism and Americanism and all the other isms out there. If we embraced our faith the way we should, we would change this country, and it would change fast.
Remember something, Joe Rossinello. That's a great way to leave it. You quoted, or you mentioned, St. Francis of Assisi earlier. Remember what even an atheist communist like Vladimir Lenin said. He said, if I had 10 men like Francis of Assisi, I would have changed the world. Even he recognized it. And what did Assisi do? What did Francis of Assisi do? He was holy. Let's leave it there, Joe. We have to. We're running out of time. We want to thank you all out there for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel. Always on air and always online. Now, don't leave, because I'm going to give a few plugs. CrusadeChannel.com. Go on the website and kick the tires. Free membership, trial membership. Listen to all the programming, Mike Church, Rick Barrett, everything else. We're convinced you're going to love it. Subscribe there. Joe and I, we have subscribers too at thefrontlinetv.com, thefrontlinetv.com. I think that we as Catholics should support all of our Catholics out there who are getting it out into the culture and fighting the spiritual battle and the cultural war. So thefrontlinetv.com, thefrontlinetv.com. That's where you can subscribe to Joe and Joe. Also very important, and in this one, don't cost nothing, like the King Dude says. Subscribe or where you find us on social media. King Dude, Rick Barrett, Joe and Joe, all of us. Where you're watching us, share it with your friends. Like, subscribe, share. That all helps with big tech while we're still kind of wedded to them. So please do that. We love you all. We thank you for your prayers. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you next week.